Good afternoon. First, I want to start off by saying my thoughts are with Kirk. I actually just texted with him. He got out of surgery the other day, and obviously this is the first time I'm getting to talk since that unfortunate play. He was playing really great football for us. These last 4 games, I think we had already talked about, he was playing some of the best football in the league. So it was unfortunate to see that happen, but was really, I don't want to say refreshing, but kind of re-energized me was talking with Kirk and the way his mind works. He's so process-oriented and so intentional. He's talking about being back at OTAs and doing all the different things and where his schedule is going to be, and just that's how his mind works. So that's how my mind went. And how do we, think about the issues we have this season and next season, all those things. We always go back to process and intent, and that's what I did. Obviously, after this trade deadline, we made a couple of moves. We acquired Josh Dobbs, somebody that I had obviously known from the draft process, and then I have some close compatriots in Cleveland who talked glowingly about him his time there, and great player to add. Really excited to have him here, and then also obviously Ezra went to the Jaguars, and first, I want to thank Ezra. He's played a lot of good football for this organization before I got here, and obviously this year, just a situation where we had really good depth at that position. We felt like it was a move we could make. With that, this was a trade deadline. As a GM, I pay attention to a lot of other sports, and I used to ask myself a lot, if you're in that situation where you're the team that has some long-term, challenges and you win kind of close to the deadline, what do you do? And I've come to observe other people's things, and it's a really interesting thought experiment until it comes to your front door. But I sat there and I studied. I looked at all the scenarios, all the different situations, and I really came to the conclusion that first and foremost, when Kevin and I came together, we said that we were always going to play meaningful games in Minnesota. And to play meaningful games, you need really good players to do that. And so to not have those players, there has to be a real reason, something probabilistically that you think will kind of get you to those meaningful games sometime in the future. And we just never really saw that opportunity at this time. And I really leaned on the leadership of this team. I had some guys reach out to me, and this is before the game. Before the game, by the way, we're sitting in the playoff position before the game starts, and they kind of reached out to me and said, Kwesi, we're gelling. We love this team. We love being here. They didn't need to do that, but I love the relationship that I have with those guys. They felt comfortable enough to reach out through different channels to say that, and obviously won the game in the way we did. And ultimately, I made a decision that we made to stand pat and keep going where we're going. With that, I'll open up to questions.
Did you take that to mean they didn't want to be traded, or they didn't want you to trade people from here?
I took it more to mean they like this team as it is constructed. Yeah.
Did you bring Josh in here to eventually be the starter, or did you bring him in there as an insurance policy?
That position, honestly, like any position, you try and upgrade the talent of the place in the room. So liked what he had in terms of what I've seen from him on film. We also really like Jaren Hall. We like Nick Mullins. It's not to say anything about our quarterback room. Just with Nick's coming back from his injury, just a little uncertainty there. So I don't want to say insurance, and then he ends up playing and. Well, Kwesi didn't know. It's you always try and upgrade the talent in the room. Whenever chance you have an opportunity to do so, you do so.
Kwesi, you mentioned Kirk talking about OTAs and things next year. Obviously, he would need a contract to do that here. Yeah. Has this year and the way he's handled it, the way he's played, changed anything in your mind about the possibility of bringing him back?
And like I said, when we broke off talks the first time, every option was still available to Kirk, and coming back was one of the really good options we had. So him playing this well the last 4 games, I talk about the last 4 games in terms of offense and defensive efficiency, we're top 10 in the league, right? And so the teams that play in the end typically are in that ballpark. So again, an unfortunate happening that it happened when it did, but we expected in year 2 for him to take that step. I think Kevin and I have said that in the past. So seeing it happen was more just our expectation of a good player getting more comfortable in the system and taking ownership of it. He actually even said it himself. He's understanding why Kevin game plans the way he does and his process and different things. So really unfortunate that it happened, but again, all options are open as they were before the injury.
How would you characterize the interest you got, the calls you got about Daniil?
I try and keep my calls with other teams confidential, but he's a talented pass rusher. He's leading the league in sacks. There's going to be phone calls, whether it's just parts of conversation or more directed. But ultimately we decided what we decided, and we're ready to go forward.
So how important was it to you to keep the options open at quarterback moving forward?
Yeah, I think you always want to, when you can, we've talked. I don't use the term. I feel like I'm going to be memed somewhere about competitive rebuilds, but I think you at the end of the day, you want to identify where you need to be and where you're at, and how do you fill that gap. But how do you fill that gap in a way that allows you to compete today and give yourself odds of getting to that ultimate place? So you typically, flexibility helps you in all those matters, right? Unless you're certain. So that's kind of what we wanted to do, and I think ultimately the move we made is reflective of that.
So do you want Kirk back next year?
I mean, Kirk played great. I think my want for Kirk to come back isn't just a me. It's not like a me thing. You know, it's a negotiation. You come together at a table and you try and see if everything works together, and we'll have that dialogue when the time comes.
How does his age and his injury play into the whole process of what you're going to do?
Yeah, that's tough. You know, I had a great conversation with his agent. I have a good relationship with him, and we talked about those things. And it's funny given my background because, you know, that was my job, right, to try and, you know, predict when these things can happen. And ultimately, we all know you can't predict injuries. We do know that there are markers and different things like that. I will say that Kirk's process is, you know, I don't know what his age is, but his process makes him younger. You saw also on the quarterback show what he puts into his body. Like I kind of compare it to like somebody like LeBron, who knows that his body and his mind are things that make him super valuable, and so he puts a lot of time into it. So I don't think he's a normal 35-year-old person in that regards. And you know, you talk about an Achilles injury. How does that impact his game and his particular skill set? Those are all things that we'll think about when we go into those discussions.
Did you have a lot of quarterback options out there available, or did you focus on Josh pretty quickly?
You know, when you have a quarterback injury in the NFL, your phone becomes the most popular phone, I think, in the Minnesota area. You know, a lot of people obviously want to come here because they love Minnesota. A lot of people want to play for Kevin. A lot of people want to come be on this team, this offense. So there were a lot of options. But again, this whole time we've stuck to our guns. This is what we're trying to do. This is where we're trying to get to. So it kind of whittles it down to the number of options we actually truthfully considered. And then once you're there, you just kind of study it. You know, I sat in an office. You know, because Jaren, you know, I believe a lot in Jaren Hall. I think he's a really good player. Now, the problem is when you project something, you don't expect him to start in his rookie year at this time. I can't say that we expected that. I can tell you that Grant Udinski and Chris O'Hara are out there on the practice field with him every day after practice like he was going to be the starter. So I have that in the back of my head, the confidence that that's instilled by watching him do those preparations, the things we saw about him in the process coming out. And then Nick Mullins, who I've been with in San Francisco, who started a lot of meaningful football games for them and played winning football. So just adding players like that really helped with that, and you know, that's kind of where we are, and that's where we're going to continue on.
Kwesi, how did your view of the trade deadline change from 1-4 to 4-4?
You know, it's interesting. When we were 1-4, it's not about it. Football's hard because it settles in this binary fashion, win or lose, right? You could play 3 amazing quarters. I would take our first game, you know, look at the underlying metrics of that game, but we lost that game. So I'm not trying to say that we didn't lose those games, but you try and look at the underlying metrics. This isn't baseball. You know, I was trying to liken it to when football was 16 games and baseball's 160. It's like 10 games, right? So you lose 10 games in a row in baseball. That'd be meaningful, but that's one game for us, right? So we don't have a chance to go 5-5 and win the first half and the second half. So you're kind of trying to split the difference of the one game and what does it really mean? What are the underlying metrics? And I have a lot of stuff that I look at. I thought we were a better team than a 1-4 team. I didn't expect us to turn the ball over the way we did. I don't think anybody on this team did. So to see it reverse itself and play itself out, and for us to be 4-4, sitting where we are now, was really encouraging because that's what, quite frankly, the team we thought we would be. So I don't want to say it changed from 1-4 because I don't think I'm ever as low as 1-4, and I probably won't ever be as high as when it's really good because football is kind of has a mean reverting aspect to it in some sense.
Why didn't an extension?
Ultimately, you don't know that anybody's ready until they get out there. But I can tell you the poise that he has. Every interaction I've ever had with him, you know, obviously we scouted him. I went to see him in person last year, and everything you know about his background, his story, he is poised. And you know, we asked the players after the game when he came in the game, like, how was it? What was it like? And they were like, it was not too big for him. You know, I think that's the first test you always look for. And look, your first snaps come backed up at Lambeau Field. That's not. I wouldn't say the ideal situation. On a third down, he stood in there and he converted a pass. You always look for those small signs because sometimes the data is not going to be large and you got to make decisions. But I know when we made this decision, I sat in my office. I think I was going to say this earlier. I was listening to Creed. I was thinking about Kirk. I was listening to Creed, and I watched my college cut up of him. I watched my preseason cut up of him. I watched his practice cut up. I've read all our reports, our analysis, and look. It's not going to look the same as Kirk Cousins, right? Kirk Cousins is one of the best throwers this league has. He's really experienced, but I think there's a way that he can play that we can function. I think there's a way that Nick Mullins can play that we can function. And that's what I came to, conclusion-wise. I think this offense, this scheme, I think it'd be remiss without talking about Kevin and what he does for that offense and how he sets people up to succeed. A lot of that's my confidence in him and the staff and Wes Phillips and Chris O'Hara and everybody we have here. So excited to go see it, just like you guys. I'm going to be watching on Sunday, learning. That's what we do with this football season. It's those first 4 games of the year, you have projections, but those things exist in your mind. I'm learning about this football team the same way you guys are. And what I've learned is something I really like, and I'm glad that we're going to be able to play some meaningful games, and we'll see what happens.
Why did an extension happen with Justin prior to the season?
Say that one more time.
Why did an extension with Justin happen prior to the season?
In a negotiation, I hate to always give you this answer, but it's just, two people trying to come together and see if their needs can be met. At the time, it didn't feel like there was. There's a reason why they don't normally get done 2 years early, and I'll kind of leave it at that. If you can look at, salary cap and contracts and this and new money and all that stuff, there's just reasons why it's harder to do at those periods of time. But the dialogue was always, super positive. We think he's the best receiver in the league. We want to be a Viking for a long time. I think that's how you start, and we'll figure out the rest.
The circumstances for this trade deadline were so unique for you because of the winning streak and then losing Kirk. Is that something you have to loop in and talk to the ownership about what they want to do and how they see this season?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I'm very big just because how I do my own process. I look at every scenario. I just map them out. This is what it looks like if we do this, this, this. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what came down for me is I didn't think that, playing for this year did anything material to seriously impact anything in the future. And once I presented it in that way, I think the decision was pretty straightforward and they understood where I was coming from. But I use them, I tell them all the time on the sideline, they're successful in what they do. So to not lean on them sometimes would be foolish on my part. They have a really good business sense. They've been in this league, longer than I have. So I do lean on them, but they ultimately leave me to make the decision set up for them, and I explain my logic, and they understood.
How did you zero in on Dobbs? You talk about all the options you had. And, did you reach out to them? I mean, he had started every game. How did you know that he'd be available? Or?
Yeah, I have a great staff. I don't know that I said it in my intro. Part of the reason why I'm so look. We might have challenges in the future that's going to take creativity and performance on the margins, but I just believe in our staff. I believe in our coaching staff. I believe in the people in this building and the football operation, our player development staff, to solve all those issues. And so they're a big part of it. But my personnel staff had identified that he was somebody that they had liked before. And then when they saw that he maybe wasn't starting, the ideas kind of clicked that maybe he'd be somebody that was available. And then those dialogues always come down to relationships, and JG and KO have a relationship, and I have a relationship with Monty, and you're just kind of talking and formulate those things, and ultimately I have to go do my process and understand what I think the player, to acquire the player, what that should be worth, and how that fits into what we're trying to do. And then once that happened, we talked, we had a good conversation, and we came to a deal.
Did you talk to him during the process of the draft? And I mean, did you have any sense of who he was, or did
Dobbs,
yeah.
Yeah, I've known him. I used to build all those draft models. So Dobbs, I can remember him coming out. He was the rocket science. They're like, Kwesi, you're going to love this guy. I guess people thought I was a nerd or something back then. I might be. So I've known Josh Dobbs, and I've got some Tennessee alums in my life that obviously a big fan of Dobbs. And so I've known him. I've known about his skill set. And then obviously I pay attention to Cleveland just because I have a lot of close friends there, and we talk all the time. So I'd seen him play there and just really appreciate his skill set. And you can see because of their offense, you can see some of the stuff that he does in terms of what we do. So just somebody that was on our radar, and when the opportunity came and at a price that we were okay with, we went for it.
Kwesi, a year and a half last one, you guys have this traumatic injury, and where do you think on the other side of this it kind of leaves your program, the biggest possible picture plan that you have, if at all? Where does this leave you, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it adds a curveball. I can't say that I thought the most maybe the most durable quarterback we have in our league was going to, anybody who would tell you that would be, misinforming you. So it does add a little uncertainty, but I don't know. I studied. I can kind of, we have this way we kind of look at every scenario, our draft picks, our money, all the players we have under contract, and ultimately we didn't, for the term, it doesn't really change that picture. If anything, seeing Kirk play that way, as I think the question was asked earlier, that's what we thought it was going to look like, and that's, by the way, without Justin Jefferson, seeing what that offense looked like, seeing an Addison improve. So again, we got games to play, and I'm excited about this team. But that's where that wistfulness maybe comes from, seeing what that looked like up close. But no, I don't know that it changes our long-term picture at all, other than just focusing on Kirk, the player, the person, trying to get him better, mix his spirits up, welcome him in to be the leader that he is for this team.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.